astonishment of most people and pollsters. My next guest, Nigel Farage, was the leader of that successful Brexit campaign. And now he says he's ready to help Donald Trump win his campaign as well. Nigel Farage, pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Now, Donald Trump is quite unpopular in Britain. The polls I've seen, really it seems that most people really don't like him. What do you see in him that so many of your countrymen don't?
Well, with fair point to say that Hillary's not too popular in the UK either. So, you know, we've got this election in which the British public think, goodness me, is this the best America can do? That's the general view. I think that Trump has been portrayed in the British press as being misogynistic and almost racist, and that's what people haven't liked very much. I would just say this to you, that we are exactly 100 days on from the big Brexit vote that happened here in the United Kingdom. And the reason Brexit happened was a very large number of people who had not voted in previous elections, or in some cases had never voted in their lives, went out to vote against the establishment. And I think the appeal that Trump has got in America is to say, look, we've had this stranglehold for the last couple of decades of big banks, big businesses and big politics who may have done well for themselves, but they haven't bettered your lives. And that, I think, is the appeal of Trump.
And so every time another prominent newspaper comes out against him, another prominent Republican defects, you think it almost feeds the energy that surrounds his campaign because it's fundamentally a kind of anti-elitist populist appeal.
Very much so. And again, you know, the crossovers, the parallels with Brexit, you know, as the date of the referendum got closer, there were, you know, respected establishment figures lining up to tell us this would be the biggest mistake we'd ever made in our lives. The economy would fall off a cliff. It would all be a disaster. And people, frankly, looked at it and laughed, because I think what people are seeing is an establishment that is too cozy, is too close.
Do you think that there are sort of hidden Trump voters in quite the same way? In Brexit, the polling suggested that the Remain side, the people who wanted to stay in the EU, would win. In fact, on the eve of the counting, you seemed to almost concede because you were reading all the same opinion polls we were, and yet it won. Do you think you could imagine a similar Trump surprise?
I think there are two phenomenons here. I think the first is that on telephone polls particularly, people are nervous to come across as being too conservative, too socially conservative. So, you know, we've seen in the last few years in Britain opinion polls getting it wrong because people aren't quite telling the truth on the telephone. But there's another phenomenon here. And frankly, the polling industry in Europe, I mean, frankly, it's almost bankrupt in terms of its reputation. And I wonder whether we're seeing the same phenomenon in America. What I'm talking about is the polling companies find it really hard to find people who are outside of politics and who are now coming into politics. And that's why the opinion polls over Brexit were wrong, although I do admit I suffered myself from a bout of 11th hour nerves.
Trump is different from the Brexit phenomenon, though, it seems to me. A lot of people who argued for Brexit, yourself included, said we are not right-wing populists. We are not in that same category. We're pro-free trade. We like the diversity of life. We welcome interdependence and globalization. We just don't want Brussels telling us what to do. We want to maintain the sovereignty of the British Parliament.
Yes.
And yet, the appeal of Trump seems to me to be about his views on immigration. He's very tough on crime. He promises to appoint justices like Antonin Scalia, who were very socially conservative. So how do you, I guess my question is, how are you so comfortable with someone who really, by most of his policies, is a conventional right-wing populist of the kind that the Brexiters told us they were not?
Well, you're quite right. I mean, Brexit was actually a very broad church, and fundamentally, it was about self-government and democracy. You're absolutely right. This American election is a much clearer right-left choice than the referendum was. All I would say to you is this, that Hillary Clinton, for me, represents a kind of politics that has led us over the last 20 years into an endless series of wars where, frankly, we've made things, I think, worse, not better. And Clinton politics is about big business, and it's about the rich getting richer. And I think that Trump is part of a phenomenon that is now beginning to sweep the Western world. Simply, people want change. And I think, on November the 8th, that's what this comes down to. Do you want continuity with Clinton? Do you want things to stay as they are? Or do you want change?
You have 30 seconds to give me or to give Donald Trump advice. You are going to be his guest at the second presidential debate. How can he improve on his performance?
Don't let her get under your skin. Whatever abuse she throws at you, ignore her. Don't defend yourself. There's no point. There isn't time. What you've got to do, Donald, is talk to people sitting at home in their living rooms. Don't get involved in a cat fight with Hillary.
Nigel Farage, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Next on GPS, this half of the globe has had its